is by Zoom or by phone by calling 877-852-5247 or 888-788-0099 and entering meeting ID 974-6174-9412. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public meeting notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org. Watch CTN. The Volunteer Resident Design Review Board, appointed by the mayor and confirmed by City Council, fosters excellence in Ann Arbor's built environment design and advises applicants on meeting downtown design guidelines. First, the applicant presents their proposed project for 15 minutes. Then the board discusses the design. After that, members of the public can comment for up to 3 minutes each. And if you could do the roll call, Mariana.
I will call you out by last name and please indicate if you're here. Perkins.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Singleton. Kinley.
Here.
Mitchell.
Here.
Katarski.
Here.
Ranson.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. So if I could have a motion and a second.
So moved.
I'll support.
That was Wendy that moved, was it?
I supported.
Wendy moved and Bill supported. Any discussion about the agenda or the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the minutes. This is the minutes of the December 11, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. If I could have a motion and a second.
I'll move.
I'll support.
Moved by Dick, supported by Bill. Come on, you guys. Wake up.
It's a big commitment.
It is.
That wasn't
Any
there.
discussion? Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. I noticed that in the packet, Mariana, the minutes said draft. I hope these have been shared with the petitioner prior to our approval today, just so they're on board with what we did.
They have been shared with the petitioner, and if you had any changes right now, then we would update them. But what is in the minutes was already shared with them.
All right, good. Thank you. Moving on to communications, there are a couple of items in our packet. We don't usually discuss these, but I would like to take a moment to comment on at least one of them. But if anybody else has any comment, please feel free to do so. The one in particular that struck me, it was actually addressed to me because I'm the chair of this board, but it's from Mike Martin at First Martin Corporation, and Mike is concerned about, he's not expressing its concern about the project that we are looking at today, except to the extent that they are being treated differently than his hotel project downtown was treated several months back. And I guess the question for you, Mariana, is they, as I understand it, and as memory serves me, they had originally proposed handling their solid waste in a certain way on their site, and that got shot down in the solid waste department. And this project that we're looking at today is handling it in precisely the same way that First Martin wanted to do it. And so I guess first concern is why the change? Why not equal treatment for the two? And secondly, I guess, whether it's appropriate. I mean, it's up to First Martin to request reopening their site plan approval. I'm not trying to get into that, but my concern is why the different treatment for the two projects.
I'll say that this project has not yet been reviewed by any of the city departments. It hasn't been officially submitted. It's coming to the design review board first. So it will go through the same process that everybody else goes through when they submit a new development to the city. And Solid Waste has not looked at this or officially approved anything yet.
Okay. Well, then I suppose that makes sense then, because what Mike Martin is saying in his letter is not that he has any objections to this project, but a warning to these developers, who I guess we'll be hearing from shortly, that what they're proposing in their site plan may not fly. Thank you for that. And anybody have any other comments about communications on the agenda? Great.
Normally, wouldn't we treat those two communications as a discussion item as we discuss this project or after the discussion? I mean, one is a letter of support.
Right.
The other is a issue of concern.
Right. It's a good point, Bill. And usually I think we just note that we have the communications and let it sort of speak for itself. But so I'm not sure.
I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying that we're doing a little out of order, but we've acknowledged there are communications related to this. Maybe that's all we need to do.
Yeah. Do these communications get shared with the petitioner, Mariana?
They were published in the agenda and are in the packet and can be found online. And if the petitioner would like us to specifically show them where they can find it, we're happy to do so.
Okay. All right. Good. Thanks, Bill. And now we move on to the first public comment section. To speak during public comment, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or call 877-852-5247 or 888-788-0099 toll free, and entering meeting ID 974-6174-9412. And Alexis will promote callers.
We have no one with their hands raised at this time.
All right, well, there will be a second opportunity for that later in the meeting. So if somebody is watching and wants to call in, I encourage you to do so. Moving on to unfinished business, there is none. And then moving on to regular business, we are looking at DR 25-0001. It's 300 West Huron Street. The proposed project is located at 300 West Huron on the corner of West Huron and First. It is zone D2 downtown interface. 57,879 square foot, 5-story building, will be 111 room limited service hotel. The main lobby entrance is at the corner of West Huron and First Street. Primary building materials will be brick veneer and fiber cement panels. The project will have a single driveway from First Street for solid waste access only and will have no on-site vehicle parking. Mariana, if you would take it from here.
Yes, I am promoting the applicants to panelists, and they will be able to do their presentation first.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Before you start,
Um,
Brandon, is there somebody else
yeah.
that will be joining you, or is it just you today?
Nitin Patel should be also. Nitin Patel, he's with Elevate Architects, is the architect for the project. I don't know if Samir Patel is going to be able to join the call here with Hawkeye Hotels. If he is, be great to promote him. If not, we will continue on.
Hey everyone, how are you?
So we will let you share screen and present. We cap the presentations at 15 minutes, but I'll give you a heads up at 10 minutes.
Great. Fantastic. Share my screen here. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, board, for having us here today. Just quick introduction. My name is Brandon Cheney. I'm the project manager with Naderveld. I'm also joined by Nitin Patel with Elevate Architects. Sadly, Samir Patel was unable to join the call. He's the developer of the project with Hawkeye Hotels. And today, just going to quickly talk about our proposed project here at 300 West Huron, the Fairfield Inn and Suites. So some of you may recall that we have gone before the DRB. It's been about 5 years now since we last presented before you guys. Things have changed quite a bit. Obviously, the economic conditions have changed since the last time we presented before the DRB. There also have been some fairly significant zoning changes too that have prompted us to reevaluate and look at how we want to reapproach the project itself. So let me go to just an overall plan here, just looking at kind of a Google map of where we're at. So like I said, 300 West Huron. So we're at the northwest corner of Huron and First Street. It is just east of the Delana Center. Just for some additional context here, you also have the Live nightclub just to the south. We also have the Flagstaff, Ann Arbor News, and M Live building here just the east. And then a block over, fairly similar use, you also have the residence in the Marriott Hotel. Just looking at the site kind of in 3 dimensions here again. So you're kind of looking at northwest across the site. Again, like I mentioned, you have the Delana Center, the Flagstaff building with the residence, the Live building, and also then the fairly new City Club apartments here to the south. It's fairly significant piece of construction just south of our site here. Just wanted to provide this slide here to give some context of what some of the surrounding structures look like and how we've taken that into context then too as how we've applied that to the building and the types of materials that have been proposed then too. All right. And then just an overall quick layout here. I'll jump to the other one. This provides a bit more detail, but it just helps you kind of understand in terms of where we're gaining access here off of North First Street with no curb cuts here off of West Huron. All right. So this slide here is showing the overall site layout plan. Internally, you're looking at the first floor orientation of the building. As I mentioned here, along the south side is West Huron Street. West Huron Street, that right away, amenities have actually been recently approved within the last handful of years with some nice DD standard raised planter beds and bike hoops and street lighting. So the thought is, in terms of what we'd be proposing along Huron Street, is fairly minimal, and keep most of the improvements intact. We would look at extending the proposed sidewalk all the way up to the building to create a nice street wall along Huron Street. Then along First Street, I should also mention too, with West Huron, there was at a time before the demolition had occurred on the site. So for those of you who don't know, the old Relax Station was located here, along with a handful of other office buildings. I believe there's a law firm roughly where my cursor was. That has since been demolished. And so the site kind of sits right now as a green site. There was an existing curb cut along Huron Street that we would look to be removing. And then First Street, too, we'd be reconfiguring the curb cuts here. So the idea, and this is what the original layout and what we like to do here with the new one, like to provide a guest drop off here off of First Street. Again, try to meet the DDA standards in terms of right-of-way amenities. So we'd be improving the landscaping with some nice raised landscape beds, both north and south of the drop-off area. First Street will be where our main entry into the building is going to be. So it's right where my cursor is here at the southeast corner of the building. And then at the north end, I did hear that this being brought up. So those of you familiar with the previous project, there was a proposed curb cut here where my cursor was to enter the site, and then a proposed curb cut here on the south side to exit the site for both parking and trash service. That has since been reduced to one curb cut along First Street. And the intentions for this curb cut, parking's been removed. And so this would be solely for any sort of delivery services and trash and recycling pickup. I do want to note, and we can obviously discuss this in more detail, but we have had some initial discussions with trash service, knowing that that would be one of the major changes and major obstacles as we move forward with the project. And so far, we've received some preliminary good feedback from the city. Obviously, we still need to go before the planning department as well as planning commission for site plan approval. Also here happening at the north end, we are proposing some covered bike parking spaces. You'll note too, we tucked in some of the ground mounted equipment, such as the generator and transformer out of the sight of anyone walking down First Street. Trying to think what else. Like I said, just overall, we're looking at trying to maximize the site, improve that street wall condition. The walkability is going to be vastly improved for both Huron and First Street for pedestrians walking by. The sidewalk will be significantly wider than it currently is. Also, we'd be providing some additional plantings here that First Street currently does not have too. So, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nitin to talk through all of the floor plans and elevations.
Sure. Thank you, Brandon, and appreciate the rundown on the site. Thank you everyone for joining tonight as well. So I'll walk everyone through the internal guts of the building, and then go over the elevations and the rendering. This floor plan you see here is it's going to be fronting West Huron. West Huron is going to be at the south side of the page. Because of the grades at the intersection of West Huron and North First Street, we experience a pretty significant grade drop, which gives us a real good opportunity to incorporate a basement to sort of house our back of house and support spaces. And this really allowed us to maximize all of our public spaces on level 1, which on the next slide you'd be able to see. Level 1. So this is our main primary floor. This is where our guest entrances will be, our hotel check-in, our breakfast areas. So we were able to maximize this as much as possible to be able to create as much transparency, especially at the corner and along North First Street. All of our public amenity spaces are fronting that, so we'll have storefronts, a lot of natural daylight coming in, and then the rest of the spaces are our guest rooms. We have a fitness area that overlooks a small little courtyard, and then we have a little bit of back of house space. Mostly it's going to be food prep, and that's mostly, active between the hours of 6 and 10. That support space has to be there adjacent to the public space, primarily just due to being able to serve the breakfast and then put everything back off once the serving time is finished up. And then, of course, we have the trash room that was noted by Brandon earlier. Up to the upper levels. So the upper levels are primarily guest rooms. Again, we've noted on there where we have the building step back at levels 3 through 5. Nothing changes except for that. On the lower level, on level 2, we have queens because naturally, because they're 2-bed units, they're deeper. And then we transition to king units, one bedroom hotel rooms directly above it. So that way, all of our bathrooms and everything stacked. It's just the change in depth of guest rooms, which also provides and meets the requirement from the D2 street wall zoning requirement. And then this is our North First Street main elevation. I think Brandon mentioned earlier, the surrounding context has a pretty heavy, significant use of brick and masonry. So here, we decided to kind of follow the theme of our surrounding context. So we're utilizing a brick base with an accent color at the windows. And then we're switching to metal panel at level 3 where the step back occurs. At the corner of North First and West Huron, we're accenting it to sort of signify the hotel entrance. And then West Huron elevation, pretty much the same language as we turn the corner. As you can see, that's where we experience that grade drop off where West Huron is sloping down, which gives us the opportunity to get that basement in there. Again, those are mostly going to be support spaces, but we have we're continuing the storefront elevations all throughout level 1 along both streets.
And I'm just letting you know that it's been about 10 minutes.
Okay, great. And this is the north, this sort of the side and rear elevations. So, we're continuing the brick all the way through, and then we're wrapping the metal panel around the side, and then we're transitioning to a fiber cement panel with sort of a fry. It's sort of a trim system that it's called fry riglet. So it kind of mimics metal panel. We're going to be matching that same color that we utilize for the metal panel to create sort of that seamless transition between the two materials. But on the back side and primarily on the back side, we're going to be using fiber cement panels that matches the metals in the front. And this is the west elevation. Again, this is primarily guest rooms, with the brick base, sort of a muted brick base with just one color, and then transitioning to the fiber cement panels on levels 2 through 5. Here we have our building section. This kind of gives you a good picture of how things stack up from, all the way down to basement level, all the way up to our level 5 and truss bearing. We have the 5-foot step back noted there. And of course, we have the basement back of house as well. The next slide, you'll be able to see our all the materials we're proposing. These are primary materials. We have the brick veneer, the accent brick veneer, which is going to be in a tan color, the fiber cement and metal panels, which are both in dark gray and gray. And then we have metal panel that's utilized just at the corner where the hotel entrance is. We will be utilizing a metal canopy. I don't think it made it in the elevations of the rendering, but we are going to be utilizing a metal canopy directly above the main entrances. And then, all of our storefronts and hotel guest room windows, metal coping, all that is going to be dark bronze to black to sort of kind of go with the theme of the entire hotel. And this will all be better depicted in the next slide, which is the rendering. So as noted before, we wanted to utilize that brick base, and here you kind of get a good idea of how that's all translated into the rendering. So we utilize the brick base to sort of ground the structure to make it nice, heavy, and bold at the first 2 levels. And then we wanted to lighten the material and the colors at the step back at levels 3 through 5. And then, you'll note that the corner stands basically all the way up to the property line, and then stands taller than the rest of the building while still maintaining our building height restriction. And that sort of, to sort of signify the predominant corner, and then also the entrance to the hotel. I think that's all I had. So we can turn it over for any questions, comments.
Thank you. I'm going to, before we get to questions and comments, I'm just going to go through some of Matt's staff report. I will try my best to answer any questions, but I'm also happy to send things along to Matt if there's something that he knows that I don't. So just a few things. As the applicant mentioned, a similar project was heard by the Design Review Board in September 2020, and that was approved by Planning Commission in July 2021, but the site plan is now expired. So this is a new proposal for this 5-story hotel with 111 rooms. Noted is that fiber cement is prohibited by city code to be a primary building material. So Matt may work with you on that to make sure that the materials revisions are all up to code. In terms of zoning, the project, as I mentioned, has not yet been reviewed by staff. It will need to undergo the usual development review process, and it is a site plan for Planning Commission. But based on a preliminary review, it does comply with the D2 zoning regulations. Matt pulled out a few of the design guidelines that are particularly relevant, in particular in site context and site planning. And staff found that the design team has assessed the character of the adjacent streetscapes and buildings and is in keeping with the recommendations of the design guidelines. They have incorporated some positive characteristics into the proposed project, such as providing no on-site parking and service areas that are accessed off of a single drive from First Street to help enhance the streetscape along Huron. For the design guidelines for building, staff has found that the building mass includes some of the suggested design guidelines and strategies to visually divide the mass and provide clear definitions and a sense of scale. For building elements, staff has found that the design does achieve some of the goals of the design guidelines for building elements, particularly with wall surfaces, primary entrances, window design and placement, and building operational systems. And then for general comments, the massing and design scale are similar to the project that was previously reviewed by the Design Review Board and approved by the Planning Commission. The most significant change is an improvement for the overall design, which is the removal of the through access drive and the on-site parking. I already mentioned the fiber cement that is not permitted as a primary material, but is permitted as trim and accent materials. So that can you can go through that during the review process as well to make sure that that is all good. And yes, after the Design Review Board meeting, this will go to Planning Commission. We'll staff review and then Planning Commission. All right, I think that's all from me, and we can turn it over to questions and comments from the board.
All right, thank you to the development team and to you, Mariana. So at this time, comments from the board. Dick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a clarification for Mr. Patel. The one of the elevations showed that cantilevered canopy, and it didn't make it into this rendering we're looking at. But is it just over the double door entry, or is it that whole glazed storefront that turns the corner?
Yeah, what we would do is we would span it over that entire storefront and wrap the corner. So the two silver pilasters that go up and frame that entire corner, we would take it from that side to the other side and wrap the corner with it. And our thought was to put maybe some channel lettering on that as well to have more of a pedestrian signage there to mark the entrance. The upper signage is primarily obviously for the vehicles driving by.
Good. That's what I was hoping you would say. Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Bill.
Just to alert everyone, I own the building on this elevation or on this rendering. I own the building to the right, the Phoenix West building. So I have some interest in the site logistics. And I would like to ask Mr. Patel, since this is quite a transformation at the main floor level and eliminating the driveway that went around and interior parking, what was the motivation for that?
So overall, I mean, I'll be honest, one of the biggest challenges that we've had on this project since the beginning, even the first iteration, was the trash services and kind of how we dealt with that. As Brandon mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of changes since this first project when it first initially got approved. There was we dealt with all the tariffs for a little while, then inflation. So that's sort of the biggest reason why things kind of got stalled out. Once we had the advantages of some of the shifts in the zoning code, we were able to sort of maximize this and have it make a little bit more economic sense. So we wanted to maximize the potential of the site while still keeping to the original design and the character and the materials. That was the reason we wanted to. We really wanted to try to see if we can do away with the drive-through. And to be honest, with the grading and all that, it to us it didn't feel like a safe because of how how busy West Huron is. It didn't feel safe for us as well for people to be able to driving through the site and then having blind spots there as well. So just from the beginning, I don't think we were too happy with the way things were laid out. This provides an opportunity for us to be able to maximize the site and then as well as still having a good entrance for service and deliveries and whatnot. So those were the main primary focuses that we took upon when we started to reinvent this project.
Sure. And my concern, as you can imagine, is whether when folks coming, checking in, checking out, and so forth, don't have a place to go to park other than what looks like maybe 2 spaces on First, that they'll end up on my property on the parking lot, and we would have a nightmare of maintaining order there. One question I had, and maybe it's just a matter of terminology in the hotel industry, but when it's a limited hotel, is this one of the hotels where I've stayed in where there's basically no front desk? So all the checking in is done electronically and there really is no it says public amenity spaces. So my question directly is there a check-in desk there? Is a person at that desk 24/7?
There is there will be 1 to 2 attendants there at all times 24/7. So this is not I think what you're thinking of is a little bit more extended stay in terms of terminology for the hotel industry, but this is limited service in terms of the offerings that the hotel gives to guests. Like for example, there's not a full bar and kitchen. That's the bigger difference here. Other than that, you still walk up to a desk. There's an attendant at all times behind the desk. And it would be 24/7.
Have you set up an agreement with the public parking? Because I think the only nearby public parking is the large lot that's kitty cornered across. It's the southeast corner, that large site. Is there an agreement you have so the guests could park there, or are they just sort of on their own to find a place if they check in?
Brandon, do you have a little bit more background on that one?
Yeah. Yep. And there's no formal agreement put in place. But what we're trying to do is put the practices in what the city's really tried to reorientate themselves, in promoting multimodal transportation, right? So we're not trying to promote just your classic arriving to the use by vehicle, but rather are there other modes of transportation like local the AAATA bus routes that are nearby, also leveraging some of the existing public parking spaces too. And I imagine Hawkeye Hotels and the management staff would provide some recommendations in terms of where the best fit would be in terms of parking nearby. I should also note too that we didn't indicate in these plans here, but deeded with the property are a handful of parking spaces just to the west of the Delana Center, and most likely those would be intended for employee spaces. So I do want to Also note that too, that those will be at least available to us at a limited capacity.
Yes, and just point of clarification, I own those spaces too.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Just like to redirect the conversation back to the design and the design guidelines, please.
Thank you.
I was relating as much as I could to the design guidelines and my recollection of what parking situation should be. It's not part of the design guidelines, but it would affect the overall appearance if they were changed from 2 entrances to just 1. So I'm done with my comments.
Thank you, Bill. Wendy.
Sure. And it's great that the building on Huron is up to the property line or 1 foot away. My question is, there are 4 residential spaces with windows that, if you're a pedestrian walking down and there is that slope there, it seems like the views into those rooms would not be the most private. But I understand the interest in having the windows all kind of uniform across that frontage. But I just wonder if that's the best way to approach windows with those 4 rooms. You speak to that? Because I don't have dimensions here, but I imagine, as you make your way down the hill, that eye level is going to be at the bottom of those windows.
Yeah, and one thing to note is inside the guest rooms, obviously we'll have curtains, we'll have the blackout curtains available for guests to close and open. But I obviously you make a great point. One thing to note on the storefronts that are specifically for the guest rooms, the bottom 2 feet, where that cursor is, the bottom of that bar will be all louvers for the PTAC unit. That's the AC units in these guest rooms. So that in itself will increase the amount of height for people to be able to see into the guest rooms. And then we'll obviously couple that with the privacy curtains inside. There'll be 2 layers, one with the blackout and then the sheer cover for that are available for the guests inside of the guest rooms.
And I know you brought up the elevation change. So moving from east to west along Huron, we lose almost 9 feet of elevation from this corner to this corner. So by the time we get to these last handful of windows, it would be above eye level.
Right. Thank you for that explanation.
All right, Wendy, thank you. Tamara?
Got it. And I know this is technically a new project, but we've reviewed it before, and there was a lot I liked about the project before, and I see a lot of that missing now. We made a lot of suggestions, and quite a few of them were taken into account, and I think it was an improved design. This design honestly feels like it's dumbed down from what you had before. There's a lot less character in the windows, in the brickwork. You say there's going to be another awning. I don't know what that's going to look like. But there was a lot more character in the old design than there is now. I have no issue with expanding the footprint of the building. That's not for me to comment on the parking and the trash pickup and all that. I mean, it seems like it would work just fine, but just as a pedestrian walking by this building, you've taken away a lot of the interest of the pedestrian, a lot of the ins and outs and depth of the facade. Used to have some interesting detailing in the brick that's gone. So I would like to see that, if there's any way you can bring any of that back and do something more interesting with these windows. have now become quite boring. I guess that's, it seems like all the materials are similar to what you provided before, at least along the main facades. And I know there's an issue about the cement board, but glad to still see there is brick at the pedestrian level. I think I don't know, the corner entry just seems a little awkward. It's like you go into it sort of to the side, but it's not very well defined. It's just sort of a big gap underneath this heavy piece at the corner. And maybe the awning will help that. But anyway, I wish you would, it's just lacking character and feels very much dumbed down from the last design.
No, I appreciate that. I will note and it's on us to maybe better depict it on our elevations, but I think some of the detailing that you're talking about is maybe those linear strips between the windows on the base on the first two levels that we had. The brick colors and the brick selection are still the same, so that has not changed. And then in terms of the ins and outs, I think we had another low roof that was popping out on the first floor to have a better, I think it just worked a little bit better with the footprint that we had at the time. But once we went through our construction documents phases, a lot of this is kind of based on lessons learned for us as well. The more low roofs that we had, obviously Ann Arbor experiences a lot of snowfall. We in Atlanta don't, so I don't think we were thinking through that as much. And then, kind of taking all those factors into consideration, that's why we were wanting to eliminate, some of the low roofs that we had initially in our previous design. But I do understand what you're saying, and we will take another look in terms of the brick detailing and seeing how we can enhance it and kind of get it back to its original character.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, I'm going to jump in front of you because I'm going to echo a lot of what Tamara had to say, and then you can go. I really agree with Tamara, and maybe this is the unfortunate situation you find yourselves in because you presented something to us 5 years ago. But I wouldn't call this dumbed down. I'd call it stripped down, and a lot of elements that were attractive about your building before, which I believe that you came through in 2 phases with us and you listened to us before. So I hope you will listen to us again. But a lot of the elements that you had incorporated in the design before are just gone. The marquees around the first story public areas are gone. Those were a real enhancement to the facades for both the First Street and the Huron Street exposures. The treatment of the 5-story corner where you brought the windows right to the corner was a very attractive element, and that's just gone. I don't know why you pulled those windows away, but it really weakens that whole architectural element. Tamara mentioned the fenestration, the windows that had kind of an attractive, kind of an asymmetric mullion treatment in them before, and this looks to me like they're just huge horizontal sliders, which I think is awful. Couple of other design things that I noticed was corridors that run all the way to the end of the building, an opportunity to bring natural light into those corridors, and no attempt has been made there to do that, as well as I'm not sure if it's the north stairwell, another opportunity for bringing natural light into the stairs, and no attempt has been made there to do that. So maybe these are pretty rugged comments, but I really like the design that you brought to us 5 years ago, and it's just gone. This is a very plain, It's just an unappealing building to me, and I'd like to see the design team, like I said, you listened to us once before. Hopefully you can take some of this commentary back. I think the idea that the canopy is going to wrap around the corner that I think Nitin mentioned, it'd be nice to have been able to see what you had in mind there in this rendering. So at any rate, if you can, you did pick up 6. I understand the comment about what's happened with our economy. I'm a general contractor, believe me, I understand that. But you picked up six rental units. So I think your site work expenses are going to be significantly reduced by the elimination of the drive-through, which that's another element that I'm sad that that's gone. So at any rate, that is my feedback, and I don't know that there will be an opportunity for you to bring this back to us, but when you finally end up at the Planning Commission, I hope you'll be able to take some of this into consideration. And then I'll just wrap up by saying that there were some comments about the method by which you intend to handle your solid waste. And another developer has brought up the notion that they were denied for that exact approach to solid waste removal. So just kind of a tip off to you that that may not work. And so if that's of any help to you as you go forward in dealing with the solid waste folks, take that for what it's worth. That's it for me, Lori. No, I was going to go to John next.
So that's okay. Go to Lori, and I can come after Lori.
All right, Lori.
Sure. I apologize for my tardiness today. I will concur with the other feedback, but move on to just talking about streetscape and landscape around the building. I think fortunately your renderings are showing very small trees, and hopefully those will be canopy trees that will be many times that size in their growth to help improve the street experience. With that, I will say this is a very tough living environment, and I hope that your design and engineering team is providing good underground soil conditions for those trees to grow to full maturity, like silvicells or structural soil mix, because we don't have a lot of landscape here as you're showing it, and need to do everything we can to make sure that those are happy and healthy. And with that, I would suggest adding an additional tree in the 25-foot long planter that you have to reinforce that. It's on the right side of the image. You have one plant in there, but those hopefully will all be very durable, irrigated, and good soil conditions underneath. It's a small cost for the survival of that tree because it won't make it otherwise. Secondly, I would love to just see additional softening even at the face of the building. You know, there's not a lot of movement to and from except at the entrance and the drop-off area. So if the setback area at the face of the building would allow some level of greening or planting, I really think it would help the experience around the building. Right now, the street edge is green and it's all getting filled in with concrete. So I don't believe you spoke to the stormwater requirements and what you might be providing. And I know you don't have much surface land to do that, but reducing the amount of pavement as much as possible would certainly be beneficial and would help with the experience of moving around the building.
And Lori, I think you bring up fantastic points. I should also note too that this rendering is not directly emblematic of what the final landscape plan will look like. I actually believe per code we're required to plant 3 trees along First Street. So those will be looked at, and we'll certainly look at opportunities in which we can soften up some of the streetscape space on both Huron and First Street.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lori. John.
Well, first of all, I'm the liaison from the Art Commission, so my comments are more about the aesthetic. But I would have to echo what I'm hearing from Jeff and Wendy, that it seems a stripped down, plain vanilla kind of building, not very exciting, I don't think. In particular, the pedestrian experience, I think that that Tamara and Wendy talked about, that if it's going down Huron, and those are guest rooms, and there's windows, I don't think it's going to be very pleasant. And if what you're saying, if what I understand is there'll be air conditioners sort of at the bottom of that window, it doesn't look that appealing from a pedestrian point of view. I hope that you take these comments constructively, that we're proud of Ann Arbor and it's the aesthetic, and so we treat our buildings like public art, and we'd like you to, if you can, use some aesthetic design that I think most of the board members saw in the previous design. And let me just ask a couple of direct questions about public art. Are you going to incorporate public art into this project, and could you describe it a little bit to me?
I know we've investigated opportunities on the previous project. I'd let Nitin. I wish Samir was here from the development team. I think he'd be the best to be able to speak towards that. But maybe Nitin might know how something like that would be incorporated.
Yeah, John, I'm sorry. Samir unfortunately had a family emergency, and he could not make it. But I know we were planning on incorporating on the first round. We did not have a chance to discuss it on this one, to be completely honest. So, in regards to the guest rooms along the first floor, one of the things that kind of brought this project back to fruition was the fact that we were able to add some guest rooms. And it's one of those things where what Jeff was kind of alluding to earlier in terms of the hotel industry, and right now with financing, tariffs, escalations of the cost of materials, I know obviously that's a secondary thing, but it is something that we have to factor in terms of being able to put in as many guest rooms as possible. One thing I do want to note out is that even on the previous one, we did have guest rooms facing West Huron Street. So there's not a huge change in that. While obviously the amount of guest rooms that we do have facing West Huron has changed, we did have guest rooms on the first floor.
Yes, I'm not talking necessarily about the use of the rooms, but it's the pedestrian experience that I'm talking about. Let me ask about the solar and the wind. I know it was brought up from staff. Are you planning to do anything with alternative energy on the building?
No, we won't be. The only thing that we would incorporate is perhaps an energy recovery wheel for the guest rooms, depending on, and that's kind of something that we would have to dive into with our mechanical engineer during construction documents. But as far as solar or renewable energy, we are not planning to at this time.
That's all I have, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Lori, is your hand still up? Okay, Dick.
Let me get that. Just to continue with John's comments, that this rendering we're looking at, the 5 blank metal panels below the word Fairfield on 2, 3, and 4 would sure be an opportunity to add some interest, color, liveliness to the facade that any westbound car on Huron's going to be seeing. There might be an opportunity there.
All right, thank you, Dick. Anybody else have comment? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Thank you to the developers for your presentation. We will have minutes of this meeting published fairly shortly, a draft of them, so that you have that going forward. And thank you for bringing this to us.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate the constructive feedback, and we will certainly be taking that into consideration as this project progresses.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on to
Sorry, before we move on, I have a summary that I'd like to read to the board
Oh,
members
yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure that I've
Yeah,
accurately captured your comments.
yeah, thank you. It's not in my narrative and I almost went past it, but yes, please.
No problem. So comment about considering the ground floor windows for privacy for guest rooms and also for the pedestrian experience. Thinking in general about a more interesting design for the pedestrian, perhaps with more detailing in the brickwork, marquees, or more interesting windows. Considering bringing natural light into corridors and stairs. Thinking about reducing pavement wherever possible and adding greenery, and making sure to think about the underground soil conditions for the street trees. And then there is an opportunity to add details and elements in the metal panels that are below the Fairfield logo. Does that sound right? Or is there anything that you would like to add or take away from those?
I think I'd like to add, just confirm that there'll be a cantilevered canopy on both First and Huron at I guess it's the southeast corner of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the risk of sounding like the building designer, which is not my intent, but I'd like it noted that the windows on the second, third, and fourth floors at the corners being brought out to the corner to meet one another is a much stronger design element than what we're looking at in this rendering.
Right, I've noted both of those. Anything else?
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Did you mention the to reconsider the brick detailing to be similar to that? Okay, great.
I did, yes. Thank you.
All right, Mariana, I think you captured that pretty well. Thank you for that. And now we will move on to the manager report.
I will also, I guess, before we do that, I'll just say to our petitioners, thank you. You are free to stop sharing screen now. And you can stay on if you'd like to hear the rest of the meeting. But yes, planning manager Brett Leonard and deputy manager Hank Kelly are in budget meetings right now. So I will be giving their report. And they would like me to tell you that there will be a proposed amendment going before the Planning Commission on Tuesday, February 19th, that proposes to eliminate the Design Review Board. This is per the City Council resolution that was passed in April of 2024. I'm happy to take any comments or questions that you'd like me to pass along to the managers. I'd like to thank you all for your dedication and for being part of this board. There will be, public hearing and such on the 19th. And then after the motion, after there's a recommendation from Planning Commission, this will go to City Council. And in terms of having another meeting, if this proposed amendment stays on track, it will likely go into effect in June. So depending on if there is another project in the downtown that is proposed before then, there may be another meeting, there may not be.
Mariana, did you mean to say the Planning Commission meeting is Wednesday, the 19th? I think you said Tuesday.
It's February 19th. So
okay.
I may have missed the day of the week, but the 19th is the date.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mariana, I assume that someone is creating a staff report for this. Do you know which planner is creating the staff report?
The staff report will be published by the end of the week, and Alexis can answer any questions about that.
Okay.
Sure. It is my name on the staff report, actually. However, it's more of a transmittal memo from items that were previously prepared by Planning Manager Brett Leonard and taken from former Deputy City Administrator John Fournier's transmittal to City Council.
So is there going to be any analysis other than what Fournier's report said? Like, you know, how much extra time it takes or any of that, or is it just the recommendation?
It is just the ordinance changes and the following the recommendation as in the resolution. I believe it's R24-109.
Well, that I have to say that's disappointing. That recommendation has not been followed up with data and an analysis by the staff. Be that they may, it looks like that's what's going to happen. So could we request that the staff report be transmitted to Design Review Board members as it's completed on Friday?
Absolutely. I will make sure that when our administrative assistant, Courtney Manor, transmits the agenda with attachments to the planning commissioners, I will make a special request, and I'm positive that she will also CC the Design Review Board members.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have to say that it's pretty disappointing to me. This recommendation came from John Fournier, and he's not here anymore, which is so flipping common in government situations nowadays. It's like being the general contractor on a project like a church. No offense, Tamara, because we're working on one together, but it seems like by the time you get around to the end of the project, the building committee has completely turned over. It's all new people, not the people that were there in the beginning. The architects basically at the end of the project, not fulfilling much of a function at that point. The only people that are left on the project to yell at are the general contractor. And so we have a recommendation made by John, and he's not here to present his rationale for that. Honestly, I don't think we have any support in the planning department by staff to keep this board. I've had the sense all along that, yeah, you were going to keep us in the loop, but I didn't feel like that there was anybody really pulling for us. And I think the only people that are pulling for us are ourselves and the original council that wanted a design review board in the first place. I think we made our pitch. Dick wrote a very, I think he wrote an impassioned letter stating why he believed that we should continue. And it's a huge disappointment to me. It's been expressed many times by Hank and by Alexis that you appreciate the work that we have done. And I'm grateful for those words. But I'm really disappointed to see the city of Ann Arbor go down this path. There's still a lot of development that's going to occur in downtown. And I just think this is the wrong way to treat this process. So that's my sermon.
If I could say something with what Jeff, I will second what Jeff said. And it's sad that the city in Fournier's recommendation is casting aside all the professionals, me excluded, who are in the design world, that are giving of their time and their expertise in critiquing buildings. An example today, the architects in the group here made some very considered suggestions, which quite possibly will be accepted. They were good suggestions. They were critical to some of the design that will be there long term. And I compare that to the review that was done in-house, which basically was a glowing report with no suggestions for changes. I think that's what you're going to find no aspersion at Kowalski, whatever his name is, that isn't on the Zoom, but he made no particular suggestions of changes similar or even vaguely parallel to the suggestions were made today, which I think were all considered good design suggestions. That's what you're getting here is better design, suggestions for better design. Whether they're accepted or not, it's up to the developer. But I think the city is missing a massive opportunity. And I'm not sure quite what the effect will be. It isn't like what's happening nationally. It isn't like this is going to cause a lot of extra cost by holding this group together with the city. Because and as far as developers I've talked to aren't particularly concerned about the extra step. If that's what was supposed to be inherent to the rationale of closing this down, that would slow up the developers, I think that's a specious argument. Enough said.
Jeff, I'll just add, being one of the people that went all the way back to when the guidelines were written at the request of council by a number of us. That council and that city administrator were expressing a concern about design quality. And then that was the purpose of our formation. And the pendulum has swung, and the current administrator and current council have a keener interest in expediency than they do design, is what I take from this. They have not bothered to respond to our letter or talk to us or try to understand what it is we do. So, and that's their right. The administrator can try to change the process, and he has the right to do that. But I think trading design for expediency is unfortunate.
Thank you.
Especially when you don't necessarily get any expediency out of it.
And thank you, Bill. The aspect of it that you spoke to, that and no aspersions cast towards staff whatsoever. But if you read the report, these are the kind of reports that developers are going to get from planning staff going forward. And Dick, you may not be an architect. I'm not an architect. But you know good design. Your comments have been beneficial over the years, and I don't know if I know good design or not. It's sort of like the guy that said he couldn't define pornography, but he knew it when he saw it. And so, at any rate, it's been a real pleasure. Tamara invited me to this board way back at its inception, and I have enjoyed each and every meeting that we've had. So, and I've enjoyed working with every single one of you. And so, don't know, Dick referred to it earlier as our swan song. Maybe we'll have one or two more opportunities to get together. Anybody else have anything to bitch about?
Well, I think you've covered it all. And I think, can't speak for Alexis, but I know she's been a great proponent of us over the years. Yes. Maybe in a difficult position, but 'cause I know we've done a lot of studies of how much better we've made these designs. And I know the memo we sent to Dick put together, really outlined all that. We don't have to go over it again, but it's not, doing the design ourselves. It is just making it better. And I think this one, like you said, Jeff, the one we just looked at is a great example that 5 years ago, we had a lot of examples suggestions that made it better. And today we had more. And, a lot of the developers will take some of those suggestions, and it makes a better building that's going to be here for the next 50, 100 years. And these buildings keep getting built with absolutely no character. And I'm standing by dumb down. It's going to sit there with no character.
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that the design guidelines are still a baseline. They're not demanding the specifics of excellence. They're demanding baseline guidelines that get you closer to that. And the additional feedback is about how you're missing the mark. You can meet all of the requirements and still have a terrible building. And that's the distinction. So if we're reviewing it against those strict rules and that's all we're expecting, that's all we're going to get. And if we feel like that's the only line that we can, speak up to, that's all that we're going to get. And I think even over the last couple of meetings, no offense, staff, but the staff comments are, let's stick to the design guidelines comments, only talk about these things. And that's where we miss the opportunity to actually make something better. It's the point of this to provide that added expertise and nuance, and the recognition of that value has already diminished. So, I think having this be successful has to be a partnership. There has to be advocacy and support across all of the aspects that make it work. And when that's lost, the value gets lost. I think that that's just a reality of some of the situation that we've been into. And having sat through the meeting where they discussed this, I would agree that wasn't a lot of advocacy within the city about the importance of what this group has accomplished over the years. But I too have really valued the time and respect you all immensely, and I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to work with you on behalf of the citizens of Ann Arbor.
If I can extend this one more comment, sorry, Jeff, but
No, it's all right.
Lori made me think of something I forgot. There are two aspects of this design review process, and the first is the guidelines, and the second is this group making commentaries based on expertise. And it's important to point out that the decision to rely on the guidelines and have staff apply them is fine, but we all believe the guidelines are dated, and we asked 15 years ago to update them, and that never came to fruition. They need to be updated. So just looking at the guidelines as a staff member isn't enough. And I think what we add to it outside the guidelines or on the fringe of the guidelines as our comments during these meetings is what you're losing. And I think that really enriches the review process. The guidelines need work. And I wouldn't like to see staff or whoever is reviewing projects be reliant on just those guidelines. They're outdated.
A good point, Dick. Anybody else? We do have a public comment, second round of public comment, I think. Did we already do that?
Not yet.
Did we already do the second round of public comment, Mariana? No, okay. We need to do the second round. So to speak during public comment, please use the raise hand feature or call 877-852-5247 or 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 974-6174-9412. Alexa?
We have no one. We have one guest, and they are not raising their hands. And we can give it 1 minute for people to join or raise hands, but it's looking unlikely.
Okay, well, let's just stand by for a moment and see what happens.
There have been no new updates since then. There are no callers raising their hands.
All right, thank you, Alexis. All right, so we are on to adjournment. If I could have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Was that Lori that made the motion? Or
Yeah.
Tamara? All right, moved by Tamara and seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hey,
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, and maybe we'll see you next month.